Hello, and welcome back to my YouTube video. Now, today, I'm going to delve into a bit of propaganda, I'm going to say. A bit of like, what is going on in your head that has made you say this? Because, like, it's clear that you might have done a tiny bit of research, but you're kind of just like demonizing a whole group of people. And I'm like, whoa! Take a step back there, buddy. But yeah, this video is a bit of a yikes, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so I have Snapchat. Okay, look, leave me alone. I have Snapchat. Okay, and you know, you've got that explore page where you can just like see random accounts suggested to you and stuff like that, and basically just kind of be like, oh, maybe I want to follow this influencer or whatever. And then I came across this account, and her name is Alexandra, and let me just say, big yikes. Big yikes. Massive yikes on this. You can have this little bio on Snapchat, alright? And I'm gonna just literally speak word for word what it says. Abstract artist, Moon. Jewish, Israeli, Zionist with the Israeli flag. And then Instagram, 20, college student, Colorado. And then the location, the actual like location you can put on says Colorado to Jerusalem. What does that mean? Obviously you can tell this is very much heavily Israel supporting Zionist Snapchat account. Just from that little snippet you can kind of see that this person, this account, you know, it takes a dark turn. They're not particularly a good person, not a good set of person. So I clicked on their story and I was like, hey, basically I didn't see her Snapchat account before I clicked on the story. I clicked on the story and the first thing that I see on here is her saying, I'm in a debate with my friend about which country's worse, Pakistan or Somalia. First of all, right off the bat, who are you to be debating, which country's worse, you know? First of all, you're just coming straight out of the gate being racist, to be honest. And you've got like a poll that closed in 24 hours debating which country's worse. Sorry, what are you on? Like, that's just rude for so many reasons. And like, essentially like, debating that and putting it on a public platform just, you know, opens the floodgates for people to be racist and people to be, you know, disgusting human beings. So I'm like, okay, you know, I'm going to delve further into this, see, you know, what kind of explanation there is, because there's more stories that I'm seeing. So I'm like, okay, what's going to happen here? I think Somalia is slightly more awful than Pakistan simply because 99% of women undergo FGM. Both are just awful countries in general and for women, but I think Somalia is the worst country in the world for women, besides Afghanistan. Not to mention the child marriage rates in Somalia are ridiculously high. Around 45% of girls in Somalia are married as children. I did look up, you know, before this video, look up like the stats to see if she's telling the truth, and yes, and I believe, give me a second. So, according to WHO, World Health Organization, in Somalia, a staggering 99% of women between the ages of 15 and 49 have undergone female genital mutilation, which is a practice deeply rooted in cultural traditions and contributing significantly to the nation's high maternal mortality ratio of 621 per 100,000 births. I do not have a problem with her obviously, you know, saying that, but it's just kind of like the way that she's gone about it is kind of like, because 99% of women undergo this, and also she didn't put the age range. Now I'm not going to be like, god, she should have, because, you know, it's a very serious problem, and yes, the 99% is right, but it is in context, even though, you know, the context is between a certain age range. But I'm not saying that, you know, you shouldn't mention that, because you definitely should. But what I'm saying is that the way she's gone about it is kind of like blaming the whole of Somalia for this problem, like blaming every single person in that country for that. And that's not right, first of all, because it's not every single person. It's like, you know, the people who believe in that practice and say that this is best for the woman, even though it's not, and those people should be punished. In that country, they should try and shift the culture away from performing that disgusting practice. But there's no nuance in that post that she says, which is just awful, because, you know, nuance is always useful, especially in these conversations. And, you know, the people who, like, you know, posted that stat and everything, they go into like a lot more detail than I will in this video about it. which is very useful and stuff to know more about the problem. The second part, I kind of just thought saying, oh, yeah, I think Somalia's just the worst country in the world for women. And you've posted like one stat, like, again, no nuance there, which is kind of a theme for people who are Zionists and stuff like that and on the wrong side of history. Not much nuance really goes through their head, I'm not going to lie. And then obviously they mentioned the child marriage rates in Somalia, which is around 45%, which I did also fact check. And as of 2006 in Somalia, 45.3% of child marriages, so before age 18, is 45.3% basically. So yes, that is correct in the percentage, but that is like the latest record that they have in Somalia specifically. Since 2006, they've relied on the Eastern African percentages, where Somalia obviously is, and in 2024 it was 32%, which is like obviously still a very high number and still not good, but I mean hopefully it might show that there's a decline, because in 1999 in East Africa it was 46%, has gone down to 32%. So you maybe could have also said, hey, maybe these countries are trying to better children and protect them from, you know, pedophiles and disgusting men who decide to marry children. But no, because you do kind of want to create this narrative that, you know, these countries are disgusting and people shouldn't go there and people should hate the people who go to this country, even though it's not every single person. Okay? Just remind, you know, that's not every single person. Anyways, you've got this post here and there's a lot going on. So she says, speaking of Somalia, maybe I should move to Minnesota and start a quality learning center. Democrats seem to be fine with Somalis mass immigrating to our country, refusing to assimilate and defrauding American taxpayers. Right, so this really, realistically, is not true, okay? There's just been a lot of fear-mongering because, again, in America, an estimated 260,000 people of Somali descent will live in the US in 2024. And the largest population of that is in Minneapolis, which is home to about 84,000 residents, most of whom are American citizens. American citizens. Honestly, I don't know why you care so much about these people, even though you say your location is Columbia to Jerusalem. So how about you just move there? Because clearly you're doing this to fearmonger, even though realistically, I don't really think you care about all Americans. You don't. Okay, almost 58% of Somalians in Minnesota were born in the US, and of the foreign-born Somalis in Minnesota, 87% of them are naturalized. And of the foreign-born population, almost half entered the US in 2010 or later. A lot of them are naturalized or born here. The people who entered, you know, in 2010 or later, they include a lot of people who fled the long civil war in that country and were drawn to the state's welcoming social program. So the state was trying to help them. And you just don't like that, apparently. You don't like, you know, states offering to help people who are fleeing war. And you're Israeli. There's some sort of a disconnect here. Massive disconnect here. She then begins to complain about people voting blue and being like, do they really help you and stuff like that? First of all, if you are a naturalized US citizen, you have assimilated to American values. But what are American values? Because honestly, I'm from the UK and a lot of what I see is US going to war. US going to war. US supporting war. And then you've got a terrible president who has done many heinous, awful things, and then you've just got like people hating black people, hating movements to further, you know, disenfranchised Americans, and also you've got like, is it not 25% of people incarcerated, but like you've got a massive incarceration rate, which is insane. And then obviously you've got this story about this Ukrainian refugee, which I don't really know about. I will put something up here to see if it's right or not. I don't know. We will see. So this part of the post is kind of disingenuous because first of all, there's no evidence that there was a Democrat judge. And second of all, there was no evidence that he's been released into society 14 times. Yes, he does have convictions for armed robbery, felony larceny, and breaking and entering. But nowhere does it say 14 times. So you're lying there. People don't really need to stand in honour of her because, as it shows in the BBC, He's been charged with a federal crime, and that makes him eligible for the death penalty. And he was charged with first-degree murder. So essentially what you can see is justice being served for, a crime which is, violent and shouldn't have happened. But also, on the flip side, Brown, DeCarlos Brown, who is the person who committed the crime, he's been suffering with schizophrenia and suffered hallucinations and paranoia. He was homeless. He has a history of mental health issues. So essentially he was being failed on all fronts and he was struggling, which may have led to him committing this crime. So I just think it's really funny how you're standing 10 toes down with like the Ukrainian refugee, which is, yes, she didn't deserve to be killed, but you just don't want to look any further into why these things might have happened and what has actually happened since the crime was committed. So yeah, disingenuous, and that was a sloppy take by her. And then I don't know what Trump's SOTU speech was, because I'm not American. I don't really follow it that closely. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't really follow American news that well. My mum does a lot more than me. But it's just like, again, a lot of rage, bait, a lot of propaganda, a lot of like just trying to demonize people who have come to the US looking for a better life, and demonizing countries which, yes, they have done bad things, but again, you can't be like standing from like this, pedestal being like, yeah, my country's so much better, even though like, your country has a lot of problems, a hell of a lot of problems, okay? Like, you can definitely criticize other countries on what they're doing to help, women, young girls, stuff like that. But you can't just be attacking them and then not, be like, what solutions might they be doing? Because you haven't done enough research into that. You just want to demonize them. And then we get to anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, a lot of people like with definitions and stuff and how it's used in law and how it's used to, police certain people who, advocate for Palestine and stand with Palestine and stuff, and how basically the definitions are being used to silence people. But I know in this specific context that she has posted that, basically saying that if anyone criticizes Israel and what they've done and what they're doing to Palestinians and how they're seeing their land, they're going to be like, hey, that's anti-Semitism, okay? Right, you just hate all Jews. And it's like, no, we are trying to make sure that the Palestinian people have somewhere to live peacefully, without, bombs being raided on them, without being in an open-air prison. Like, come on! Context matters in this one. And then, apparently, Free Palestine is a call for genocide. That's a bad one. Because Jewish people have gone through a genocide. Okay? They've gone through a genocide. They went through the Holocaust. A terrible thing. A lot of their population was wiped. A lot of their history was wiped. But you cannot say that Free Palestine is now a call to then kill the Jews again. But it's not. We've definitely made it very clear that it is, a time to try and free the Palestinian people from essentially the abuse that they've had to take for years and years, and how they are getting wiped out, how a lot of the history in their country has been wiped out, and then now you're just trying to turn it on them and try and be like, hey, they're calling for genocide. No, okay? That's not how it works. I think that's really it, to be honest. I just came across this account and it's crazy. And I don't know how, and it's just, I just wonder in years' time when it comes to reviewing this, how people are going to try and twist the truth and be like, hey, I didn't do this, even though there is evidence. But like, I just wonder how history will look back on them and how history will remember people like this. Not even just like on Snapchat and stuff like that, but even like in media, in news, on YouTube, stuff like this, because it is a televised genocide against the Palestinians, and there are a lot of people who have vocally supported killing innocent children, and I just wonder how they will be viewed. That has been my video. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, donate to my Buy Me a Coffee page. That will be very cool. The link will be in my end screen, and yeah, that has been my video, so I will see you in the next one. Peace.